So in this segment, we're going to talk a little bit about partnering with other brands to further your brand. So I'm joined here with Stephen Canfield. He is currently the Vice President of Marketing for WeTransfer. And prior to that, he worked with Red Bull for 5 years to develop the music strategy. So Stephen, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, of course, glad to be here.
So what exactly is sponsorship as it relates to artists and brands?
Cool. So I think sponsorship in general, probably the best way to look at it is a brand who is investing in either an artist or an event, ultimately to reach their business objectives. That's sort of in its broadest form, right? But I think probably what's most important and relevant for this topic is good sponsorship. And generally, I think good sponsorship is one that lives between the objectives in the brand and the objectives of the artist, with a relationship that sits in between that helps to accomplish both.
So why would an artist decide to work with a brand in the first place?
Ultimately, as an artist, I mean, you generally are in need of two main things, right? So I think one is amplification or promotion, and the other, which is resource. Money to help fund a tour, money to help fund a new music video, to help fund a new record, whatever it may be, right? So I think, generally speaking, there's two things that brands have. One is money to help you realize those objectives. And, I think with that comes the caveat that they're trying to do something with that money too, because they're meant to invest it in an advertising program or something like that that's going to make their board happy. The other thing that most brands have that you might end up working with is a level of resources as it relates to promotion. So if you consider someone like Nike, the reality is they have massive social channels. They also have a level of spend that they will do behind a campaign that will get it out to people that you may not reach otherwise. And some of them, I think the ones that most people are interested in partnering with also have a pretty dedicated consumer base. So if you think about someone like a Converse, there are people that love Converse. And those are people that, if you're not reaching them already, you can actually reach them through that brand.
That being said, do you think that a brand can break a band in the sense that record labels used to or are responsible for?
To be candid, even though I think it would be a really convenient answer to say yes, I think breaking a band is really hard and takes a lot and a lot of different people and a lot of different touch points. So, the artists that tend to do well and tend to kind of get into that public consciousness are just seen a lot in a lot of different places. I think if you think about an artist that you fall in love with, you probably see them 30, 40 times before you actually press play and actually listen to them. So I think one place where a brand really helps is that it's another place that you can, as an artist, create a touch point. But I think, there are things that a brand lacks as it relates to breaking a band, right? So radio, great example of something that you're going to need a label for generally. And a lot of music, as much as radio is sort of moving away from being as relevant as it once was, much music that's in the top 40 today is still driven by radio, which is an important metric in driving charts.
So I want to take a couple steps backward and just kind of have a conversation around how a band decides to work with a brand or even starts to identify the types of brands that they would want to work with.
I think it first starts with who you like, right? So I think that, there's this traditional stigma about artists not selling out, right? But I think it's always an ironic conversation because generally the artists that are talking about not selling out are already wearing a pair of Converse and already playing a certain type of instrument and already sort of have an affinity for certain things, right? So like they're drinking the orange juice, wearing the shoes, doing the thing, and talking about how they hate brands, which is sort of the basis of living in society, right?
Right,
so,
right.
So I think a key first step is just thinking about what you actually like what brands make sense for you as a human being, what fit with your values, what fit with the values of your audience. I think another question is what brands have something that you need or want, and that's not just money. Like I think if you're just going after the money, so is everyone else. Good luck. You need to really think about other things that a brand can offer because that's what that package is going to look like when they offer it to you. And I think you also want to think about who you're a fit for, right? So just because Red Bull has a good amount of financial resource and a good amount of promotional resource You may not be an artist that's similar to other ones that they've covered in the past. There may be a moment in time where they're promoting primarily urban and hip hop artists, and you are a hardcore band. Then it's probably not the right time for you to reach out to them. It's not to say that you shouldn't meet people and have conversations, because you always should, and that's the best way to learn their objectives. But I think, it's a bit of common sense. It's the same as if you were to meet someone on a human level, you'd be thinking about, would this person be a good friend to me? Would I be a good friend to them?
Right.
Or we did the same thing. It's sort of all the same types of concepts.
So what can kind of a burgeoning young band that's just kind of starting out, what are some steps that they can take as they're kind of developing their identity, their image? What are some things that they should be thinking about, or steps that they can take to kind of think about the future of positioning themselves to be able to partner with a brand and make themselves more attractive to brands?
Another important thing to think about is just getting ahead of the negotiation, right? So generally speaking, if you look at most negotiations, the party that reaches out to the other party is immediately on their back foot when it comes to the relationship, right? Because you're sort of chasing them. So I think you want to get to a place as an artist where brands are reaching out to you, and you have a choice between multiple that you can use and decide between, on your timeline. That's the goal, right? That's not always possible, and there will be times that, even the biggest artists in the world have to reach out and ask for support on a music video that might be over scope, or these types of things. But I think most important is the general things that I suspect the class is covering, in totality, right? So I think a big part is the creative. It's actually your music, of course, what it stands for, what it is, the audience that could come around it. I think as well, your brand is very important. That's the first thing that they're going to look at, and it's something that they're going to think about. There are brands that want people that are more controversial to work with. There are brands that don't. That should factor into how you work with them and if you work with them. I think another thing is your following. So this is a case where if you don't have an audience, there are certain things that you can do with the brand that may be fine, like syncing your music onto a commercial. They're not necessarily looking for a massive audience behind that. And in some cases, actually, it's better for them to have smaller artists because they don't have the budget for some bigger ones for sync. But if you're seeking sort of this big, massive tour promotional support, and you're playing 200-person rooms, that's harder to justify in the brand's mind, because over 20 days at 200 people, the reality is they're just not meeting that, not reaching that many people. So getting your audience big is another big part. I think another thing that they're going to think about generally is the type of fans that you're reaching. So you want to have a really good understanding of who your fans are. It's one thing to have a small fan base, but if you're able to say to a potential partner, your fans sort of, this is who they are and this is what they represent, this is what they purchase. I think that's especially true in the dance music world. So there are a lot of sort of more cred dance artists that have pretty production leaning fans. So their fans are very into audio. They're very into making music themselves. Mm-hmm. So then it's very easy for an artist like that to say, hey, I don't have that many fans, but the ones that I do have all have the potential to be using your gear, right? Which is different than an artist that may be a bigger artist, but has fans that are not into that. So I think it's a lot just about sort of matching in that way.
So at the end of the day, do you think it makes more sense for an artist to work with a brand first, or to kind of try to go after a record deal first? Or do you think it matters?
I think it depends artist to artist. And I think as well, it depends on what stage you're at and what you need. So I think maybe it's worth even speaking to some trends as far as where labels are very, very helpful now versus brands, right? And vice versa. So, good example, we spoke a bit ago about radio and how that's changing. So labels traditionally are who drive radio, they're who drive physical distribution. That's what they do better than anyone, and will frankly continue to, because there's a lot of money and infrastructure that goes into both. If those are relevant to you, you probably want to think about a label first. So if you want to be a mainstream artist first, you're probably going to need a record label, or 10 years with no sleep, on the road, becoming a massive band, and a lot of talent and a massive fan base, right? Mm-hmm. I think another thing that labels are doing increasingly well is servicing as it relates to sort of digital platforms, right? So where radio is changing a bit, one thing that's sort of coming up and filling that void in the marketplace is playlisting on platforms like Spotify. So Rap Caviar is a great example of that. There's a person that programs that, and he is one of the biggest tastemakers in America right now, because if something makes that, ultimately it will generally become a reasonably big song. Labels are probably going to help you with Spotify servicing much better than a brand would. So there's those types of traditional things. I think another thing is, if you need a record with great songwriters and a massive team and a massive set of producers and those types of things, that's something that a label can generally help you get done, and sort of help to give you that time and that creative resource to do it. It's not to say that it always works that way. There's a lot that you have to do to get the time and the attention of the label so that they actually will take a bet on you. But the likelihood of a brand sort of saying, we're going to set you up in a studio for 6 months, on a project, connect you with multiple songwriters, connect you with multiple different producers, let you record 28 different songs, decide which ones you want. It's pretty slim. There may be 1 or 2 brands that would do that, and there are, but there's 2 brands, and those slots are getting fought over really, really hard. I think, to the flip side, where a brand helps in a way a label might, the reality is, speaking to the point of time, a lot of artists just need time to figure out what they want to be and what they want to do. I think in some ways what you need is little cash infusions to kind of keep you going. And there's cases where if you do the right thing, be it a sync, if your fan base isn't there yet, or be it some other sort of even branded show, there may be a level of money that you can get from that can keep you going and, continue to sort of give you a bit of runway. So that's really helpful. Sponsored tours is another thing. Like if you're going onto a bigger tour, you may not be able to make the numbers work based on the production that you have. Right. Sometimes a brand can come in at that point. Another big thing is music videos. So, I would say that's the number one thing that people reach out to us for.
Last but not least, what advice would you give to kind of young artists who are just starting out, who are just kind of trying to figure out what the heck they're doing? What would you share with them?
In relation to the brand world or just in general?
Yeah, well, or both, yeah.
I think the delicate dance you got to figure out is knowing your value, right? Because there's a certain point where it's a level that if you're going to reach out to a brand, it's very important that you know what you can offer to that brand and what you can't, because that'll show a certain self-awareness in the room and in the negotiation that I think the brand will appreciate. The delicate part of that is if you're always thinking about your value and always sort of thinking about, well, would everyone actually care about this? You're not going to have the sort of confidence you need to like innovate and get to the next step of your career. So I think you have to really go back and forth between certain types of meetings where you're being very upfront and saying, here's what I have going for me. Here's some things that I could use your help with, in places where I'm not quite where I want to be yet. But I'd rather that up front. Which I think is going to help you get that second, third, fourth deal with that brand done. But then there's other places where you have to be massively ambitious and not care and just sort of push through. And I think, that's a really key part of going to the brand world. So I think you sort of have to find that balance in the right moment to take advantage of both. But it ultimately comes down to knowing yourself, knowing your audience, knowing what you want to accomplish, and then using multiple parties, not just brands, to help you get there, because you will need help. I mean, I think there's yet to be a case study where anyone has done it on their own. There's certainly that narrative that artists have shaped, but every one of them has had help in the form of individual people that have given them advice, in the form of companies that have taken a risk, in the form of labels that have taken a risk, in the form of festivals that have taken a risk to help them get where they want to go.
That's great. That's super, super helpful. I think that, what you've been sharing is very much what I've been working through and kind of what I'm trying to share with the people that are taking this course and watching this video. So thank you so, so much for joining us and sharing some of your wisdom.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Stephen. Take care.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.